lower. Yes? So these individuals tend to be leaner, have lower body fat, have lower body lipid profiles, and have usually greater lean body mass. So lower fat, a little more muscle, more lean in general. So their body weight and body fat proportions are a little bit lower. All right, so cardiovascular disease risk, obesity, all that way lower. That makes perfect sense, right? And actually longevity, life longevity, a little bit longer. So especially we have certain populations around the world that we can look at their diet and what they do and what they eat and consume. Some that are vegetarian, it's not totally across the lines because they're vegetarian but they eat a lot of seafood. So they're pescatarian, I guess you would say, right? They have actually the healthiest rates. They have the longest longevity. They have the least cardiovascular disease and stress, and like they're just happier people. They're leaner, happier, sort of, they live longer, but they're not pure vegans or vegetarians. They actually do, they're like Fisher villages. There's a lot of Fisher villages. They eat a lot of vegetables, and then they balance it out with seafood. What are the risks and concerns?
Iron deficiency.
That's right, that's one of the number one. Iron deficiency is a big one, because the non-heme iron is the plant-based iron, and that's harder to absorb and get it into the system. You don't get all of it usually. So you gotta eat a lot. What else?
Iron or vitamin D deficiency.
Vitamin D deficiency is another one, making sure you get enough vitamin D. And some vegetables will have it, but a lot of cereals and milk are supplemented with vitamin D. And if you're a straight like vegan, you're not gonna have dairy, right? So you're not gonna do the regular skim milk or milk. Although almond milk and some of those are supplementing with vitamin D now. So those, you can actually get it in non-dairy milk supplements or substitutes, I should say. Okay, so iron, calcium deficiency is a big one. So iron, calcium, the two ones we talked about that impact women the most, and those levels are the most important for women. Those are two of the specific essential minerals and nutrients that there's many vegetarians and vegans that are low in those areas and that have difficulties getting enough of that in the diet. Okay, so if we don't have as much calcium and as much vitamin D and iron, some of those are three of the major vitamins and minerals. What could happen to the bones?
Brittle.
Right, so demineralization of the bones. Osteopenia, slight version of when it starts to lose bone mineral density, and then osteoporosis, full on resorbing the bones. There's not enough calcium and phosphorus in the bones. Does that make sense? So certain injuries related to that, to bone mineral density loss with aging, that is also a concern or a risk. So you have to balance it. So like I said, there's incomplete protein and there's complete protein, and a lot of vegetables and things like rice or beans, they're incomplete. They don't have all the amino acids and the protein that you need and the vitamins you need, but when you eat them both together and you complement them, then you have enough. You have sort of a complete protein situation. So that is always a factor to consider. Yes? Make sense? Okay. So obesity. So now we go from vegetarian and veganism. We talk those and we link this into obesity. Major risk factor for cardiovascular disease, hypertension, stroke, diabetes, and even some cancers. What's hypertension? This is review.
High blood pressure.
High blood pressure, sort of chronic high blood pressure over an extended period of time, right? Not just real high from after you do exercise like the stair test for 5 minutes, right? Your blood pressure goes up and your heart rate goes up. That's normal. This is chronic or consistently elevated with multiple measurements that you have a high blood pressure. Give me a number that's considered high blood pressure.
150.
Yep, 150 would be high. So anything over about 120 over 80, if you're an adult, millimeters of mercury, that's sort of a healthy blood pressure. When you're way above this, you get to 159, 160, 170, that's hypertension. Goes into hypertension, pre-hypertension, stage 1, and then stage 2 hypertension. That's real bad, okay? So that's blood surging in your blood vessel walls, in your arteries, surging against them in your coronary vessels that serve your heart. And if you also have high cholesterol, which often will go with this, you have cardiovascular disease, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, you are at increased risk for heart attack and stroke. Because if you nick the blood vessel walls, so there's damage to the blood vessel walls, and you have a lot of fat in your blood, that gets used to pack it up and make plaques in there, and that's what leads to CVD and heart attack and stroke. Stroke happens in the brain, heart attack happens with the vessels of the heart, okay? So Risk is greater if your visceral fat is accumulated rather than subcutaneous fat. And again, we've talked about this. When we did in our first lab, we looked at anthropometric measurements, height, weight, BMI, certain body fat analyzers. So if we have a high waist to hip ratio, I also had you do this in lab, right? So this means if you're more apple versus pear, so if you have a higher waist to hip ratio, closer to 1 or greater than 1, that means the midsection is larger than the hips. And that puts you at increased risk for obesity and a lot of these other diseases. And it sounds funny, but really it is categorized as sort of apple shape versus pear shape. So that's why I asked you those questions in lab. Some of the reason for this, the visceral fat is actually less sensitive to insulin. Insulin is what allows your cells to metabolize and use sugars, carbohydrates like glucose. It also affects fat metabolism. So visceral fat accumulating around the organs and around the abdomen in that region puts you at a major risk factor for things like diabetes because it's perturbing how your body responds to insulin. And insulin is what allows you to actually take up and use sugar, use glucose, get it out of the blood and metabolize it in all those pathways we talked about, in metabolic pathways. Okay, so what's the risk? Single greatest threat to public health of this century. A lot of nutritionists and physiologists and exercise physiologists and biologists have been doing research on this for a long time. Now it's even saying that it's passing up tobacco. So the effects, the number of deaths that result directly related from obesity and cardiovascular disease is actually now surpassed smoking. So things like lung cancer. It's the number one killer. Number one killer in the United States. Not in the world, in the United States. It's related to diet, activity, inactivity levels, genetic and environmental factors. It's a combination of all of these things. The blueprint that you have in your body, your genetic, familial, inheritance, and then what you're exposed to, and then how you live your life. All those things feed in. And sometimes there's no two people that are exactly the same, right? What the exposures are and how their body responds to these different insults. But I can tell you 65% of American adults are overweight or obese. This number used to be like a third, a quarter. Now it's 2/3. So 2 out of every 3 people will be in the overweight or the obese category. Rates of overweightness and obesity have doubled in kids ages 2 to 11. That's my youngest son. And then tripled in adolescents, like teenagers, 12 to 19. That's my middle daughter, like her age category. So the rates of this is going up, not just in adults, but it's going up in kids, starting at very little kids at age 2 and 3 years old. We're seeing them on the growth charts and the weight and height way up here instead of more on an average of where they used to be 10, 20 years ago. So to show you the obesity epidemic, these are census charts. So they just look at, and these are based on BMI. Okay, so notice BMI we're using as the index for overweight, obesity, healthy range. And we'll talk about that in a minute. 1985, so the legend is over here. Light blue is 0 to 10% of the adult population is overweight or obese. So light blue, white is good, it's nothing, it's not even measurable. Okay, so 1985, 10 years later, 1995, it goes up, so it looks like half the country approximately has about 15% or greater of the adult population that are obese. And then the medium blue is greater than 10%, so 10 to 15%. The adults kind of split, notice that? 2005, now we shift up to greater than 25% of the population, greater than 20% of the population. Colorado's still holding strong at about 15 to 18% of the population. We go now to 2014, there's a new census from 2016-17, but I don't have that data yet. It looks worse than this. This is the entire country, approximately Maine south and east, greater than 30% of the adult population, obese. And then notice here down Louisiana, so it's greater than 35% of the adults. The only one still holding strong is Colorado, and voila, California. Wow. Going at about 20 to 25% of the adult population being obese. Notice the Hawaiian Islands. Colorado, California, and the Hawaiian Islands.
And Vermont and Massachusetts.
And Vermont, Massachusetts, thank you. I suck at my East Coast states. In the East, these tiny little pocket. Okay, tiny little pocket there, and then here. Yes, Christina.
I don't know
go ahead,
why, but why is it like California and Colorado so contrasting against like is there reasons, is there policies, is it like what, I don't know if you know, but.
I do not know. This is up for major debate and speculation. I have speculation, I have ideas. let me get yours first, and then we'll go there. Christina.
So, this might be a dumb question, but what classifies you as obese? Are you just like overweight and then you're classified as obese?
No.
Or you have to be overweight by a certain
No, remember the BMI I had you guys do, and I gave you
Yeah.
all the classifications, right? So like 19 to 24 healthy, 25 to 30 overweight, 30 to 35 obese, greater than 35 morbidly obese. There's an actual chart, and it's in here, and it's in your lab packet that we did in lab. That is actually the criteria to sort of put people into those, whether they're healthy, obese, or overweight. Yes.
I think one of the reasons why these states have like lower rates of like obesity is because they have more like options for physical activity. So
Yes.
like when
Yes.
I think of like Colorado and Vermont, I think of like skiing.
Yep.
So that's kind of like my
Yeah,
theory.
I agree with that. I agree. Melissa has a good idea. Did you hear that? Outdoor activities, things that are available. I think that's a huge part of it. I think that's one of the number one factors of it. They're also, in California, tends to be a little more health conscious, a little more physical aware, especially with like Hollywood and all that stuff, right? And social media and the Kardashians and like whatever. We have all that kind of superficiality side of things. There is kind of a more emphasis on wellness and how you look and all those things. And I think paired with environmental options to go out and do stuff, you can sled, you can snowboard, you can ski, there's Aspen, there's all these crazy, it's cold as hell, but they do a lot of outdoor stuff. And then when it's warm throughout the other side of the year, there's a lot of like marathons and running and biking and hiking. Same with California, we're kind of spoiled, we have a lot of nice outdoor things to do. I mean, even right here, we can go like 45 minutes, get to the coast. We could go hike at Mount Diablo. We could go to the bay. There's all these outdoor things. I know we're all busy. We don't get a lot of time to do that. But we are living somewhere there's a lot of beautiful outdoor things to do. Same with Hawaii. Have you ever been to Hawaii?
Yep.
And they're eating seafood. There's more fresh seafood there, and there's actually grass-fed beef there where the cows just like roam around all happy on the side of the hill. And they've got organic coffee ground, like plantations that you can tour. Everything's just real natural and sort of a lot of outdoor beautiful stuff to do. And it's hot. It's hot as hell. When it's hot, in general, a lot of people don't eat quite as much because when it's cold and it gets, right, you're kind of like hibernating. So it's warm. You're like, I'm good. Yeah, Michael.
So what about Louisiana? It's hot. Like,
It is hot and humid there, and I went to Louisiana and I absolutely love it. And I think if I lived there, I think I would be like 80 pounds heavier than I am, like no doubt. I went there for a science conference, and me and my friend went, and we were eating gator, and we were eating catfish, and crawfish, and frog, and everything's like battered and fried, and like so yummy. Yes, and big servings, like we could just get one thing and share it. We had like shrimp and grits. Oh my God, shrimp and grits were absolutely. Oh boy, that's my favorite. I'm like, oh my God, New Orleans has the food. So they've got soul food, right? Comfort food that is higher in fat. There's a lot of seafood, but then it's fried and there's a lot of fatty, buttery, rich. So it's the sofas, it's the fats and the sugars added to stuff. It's exactly what I like. They took good care of me there. Even at the science conference, they like had a buffet. I mean, I could just keep going through the lines and like trying every single thing I want. Oh, that was good. I'm gonna get some more of that. Like it was all free, so I went crazy. Also, I will say not just the food type and the composition of the foods that are eaten, because you can do a lot of outdoor stuff there. There's a lot of swamps and boats, and I went like on this gator hunt thing, and but it is hot and humid, so it's real hot. But some of these, if you notice the South, some of these areas in the South, these are kind of the areas that were ahead of the curve as far as gaining overweightness and obesity and stuff at the time. There's a lot of poverty as well. So we're talking about socioeconomics actually come into this as well, not just outdoor options and superficial things, but it's like money, okay? You don't have a lot of money, you can make food cheaper. That food is lower in nutrient content and it's fattier. Right? It's like the noodles and the pasta, and like it's hard. Vegetables and fruit are not cheap. The way our country and the world does things is a little bit backwards because it comes to making money. So those things that are very inexpensive have low nutrient value, and they actually cause more weight gain ultimately. So we had our guest speaker say, you just go buy beans, $2 and stuff. I think it was Tatiana that said, where the hell can you get a bag of beans, a 5-pound bag of beans for $2? Like the dollar store? Like where, because I know I've shopped for a whole house full of kids and their friends any given week, and it's expensive. Eating healthy is actually, it can be expensive, so you have to find ways to do it inexpensive. And there's this great in San Ramon, there's this like produce stand, so cheap. You can get like $20, get tons of produce. So you have to find those little places because it's always not readily available. Were you gonna add to that?
I was just gonna say, along with like the lower socioeconomic status, like that's why I noticed that Illinois is like less than the rest of the Midwest, because Chicago brings up the GDP for Illinois, so like
Right.
it's a higher standard of living than the
Right.
rest of the
Right.
area, which
Okay.
I find really interesting.
Yeah. So there's a lot of factors. I don't know. Legalizing marijuana also happened first in Colorado and then in California. So I mean, I don't know. But for me, I think smoking pot makes you eat more.
Yeah, but it's.
I mean,
it's
not that-
But it does speed, there's a little bit of speed, there's a little bit of speeding up that's happening, so I don't know, is that related to the health consciousness and the take care of the body and the balance? I don't know, but I can say that legalizing marijuana sort of correlates with that as well. I don't know, so I have no idea, but I gotta move, because we're spending too much time on this. BMI, okay, you've already learned BMI. This is a way to diagnose obesity. BMI is your weight in kilograms divided by your height squared. Meters squared. So kilograms weight divided by height in meters squared. And you all did these calculations. So BMI less than 19 is considered underweight, or if you're an athlete, you will typically be in here. Okay, they have lower body weight or a higher lean body mass in general. 19 to 24.9 healthy, 25 to 29.9 overweight. So they're little bins, kind of categorized. BMI over 30 is obese. Over 35 is morbidly obese. Okay, so these are the general categories of when we do the consensus and we see where people are. Because you go to the doctor, and what's one of the first things they do? In a physical, height and weight. A lot of times they ask for your height, or they'll actually measure your height. If they already know it, they don't need to measure it. Height and weight, and there you go. I've got the factors, the numbers that I can plug in, and I can calculate this very easily. And then we can do a census and look at all the kids and all the adults. Are there better ways to assess body fat, though, and obesity? Yes. What are those other ways? Underwater weight. We call that hydrostatic weighing or hydrostatic testing. You go underwater, you hold your breath, you're floating on a little swing, it's measuring you. It can give very accurate assessments of how much fat and non-fat composition you have. We also have the BIA, or the bioelectric inducer fat analyzer, where you hold it out in front of you. It puts a little benign, small current through your body. It detects how much fat is actually transmitting, that current is going through, and gives you an estimate. You can also do skin fold testing. Remember the calipers, the skin fold testing? The thing is, a lot of you said that's a crappy, I read your discussion, that's a crappy way, that's the worst way to do it. BMI and some of these other things are better. Really, that's not true. Skin fold testing by an expert that knows exactly where to grab and how to do it. It's been tried and true many, many times. It's pretty accurate. Skin fold testing is actually next most accurate after hydrostatic weight. Okay? BMI is really like an estimate. It's an estimate of body fatness. And I did say this already, but like The Rock, considered obese. Not obese, right? Huge, tall, very muscular, very broad, big bones, a lot of muscle. People that are low on the end of the scale or high on the end of the scale, they're kind of in the curve, which is like a sigmoidal curve. So it will say really underweight or really obese, when really that's not the case. So it doesn't hold up perfectly for everybody, but it's a good index. It's a good measure. It's an easy way to measure, and it's kind of an efficient way to assess it. So several other tests we talked about, we did these in lab. Okay, so BMI less than 25, that's good. Also waist circumference or waist hip ratio, good for women is about 0.79, but Michael, as we know in lab, right, yours was a little higher. You wait a minute, am I normal? This value is for women. So what do you think men's waist to hip ratio would be? Would it be higher or lower than 0.79 or 8? 0.8. So it's waist is the top number, hips are the bottom number. You're dividing the top number by the bottom number. Women are curvier. Yes?
More the same.
What you tell us? More straight. So men are more straight. They don't have the jutting hips that go out, right? So say my number is 1 for my waist, my number is 1 for my hips. It's about the same. Men have a ratio of about 1. Male ratios of waist to hip are closer to 1. They're like 0.9, 1, usually, typically. And healthier females tend to have a slightly smaller ratio, like 0.8, 0.85, 0.79, somewhere around there, okay? Skin fold testing we did, bioelectric impedance analysis, or BII, we did that instrument. Hydrostatic weighting we didn't do, but we can do it here at St. Mary's over in the Human Performance Lab, and I've had my previous physio students do it. They wear a bathing suit, they get in there, they do it, it's very accurate. All right, so we already did those. Women are at increased risk though, because there's more fat in women than we've had in all previous times. So ever in our nation's history, we've got more increases in body fat in women. And actually African American and Hispanic women have greater percentages overall of overweight and obesity than white women. So just looking at the breakdown of the numbers, there's an ethnic difference in the percentages of body fat. And there's a lot of things that probably go into this, like we talked about. There's environment, there's genetics, there's socioeconomics, there's cultural aspects, there's all these things that sort of are in this, in these numbers, in these differences. We know though that women are spending billions of dollars on weight loss, right? It's a billion-dollar industry. All these weight loss and fads and liposuction and dieting and Atkins and that. A lot of these authors are like billionaires. They just come out of the book and they're like, this is the diet, this is the way, this is what you have to do, and they make a ton of money. Because people are looking for something, right? And have that hope. So there's other serious issues. I don't want to just put it on overweight and obesity. It is linked with all these diseases, and it's an epidemic, what we consider in the US. But other sides of this that are also very serious issues, right, are like negative body images, and we've talked about that in some of our women's issues in the media stuff. Self-esteem issues, social media influence, eating disorders, body dysmorphia. All these things are sort of a factor, an interplay of the individual with their culture and with society, and what is the norms of beauty or the norms of body fat levels and all these different things. Have you guys heard of body dysmorphia? Do you know what that is? Yeah? No? It's where you basically think there's something horribly wrong with you, a particular thing, and you just want to change it, and you try everything you can to correct it, and you hate it, and you're just never satisfied with it. We all have insecurities, right? There's always things you sort of feel like, I wish this was better, or I like that, I wish I had that. But this is a very unhealthy sort of obsessing. A lot of people that have body dysmorphia, it could be their face, it could be parts of their body. You've seen people that have undergone cosmetic surgery like 50 times, and they try to change their face, right? They're just re-sculpting and redoing over and over, like their nose, over and over, their jaws and their cheekbones, and sort of transforming their appearance. They see a horrible deficit or a problem with it, even though everybody else might think it's perfectly fine and beautiful. So it's internal, the way that they view themselves. So these are all issues that we have to sort of, they're there as part of this problem. Overall weight management, do we have time? Yeah, we got a couple minutes. So overall weight management, I will say, is just balance, balance, balance. Is it to deprive yourself? Is it to eliminate every single thing that you like? Absolutely not. Maintain body weight in a healthy range. That is the ideal. And the main way that you can do this, and people don't really think about this enough, is increase physical activity. Because of why? The impacts that it has on your metabolism and on your lean body mass, and what that does to your calorie consumption and expenditures. That will increase all of that. Speed up all your metabolism, clear fibrotic your arteries from plaques, lower cardiovascular risk and cholesterol levels, greater than 150 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic exercise a week, and some muscle strengthening exercises at least 2 times a week. Muscle strengthening is like resistance, it's like weights, it's plank. You can even plank. You guys don't know the planking. Planking was a thing for a while. People were planking and taking pictures. I thought, well, at least they're getting out there and getting healthy. They're planking in front of stuff. It's just strange, but you can do that. Balance calories from foods and drinks with calories expended. And these are the reasons for doing the nutrition logs and the activity logs and calculating BMR and your eating, burning calories, so you can put it all together and see where you're at. Make small decreases in calorie consumption if you need to. Don't diet. I will say that many times. Balance is key. Anything that's not part of your normal behavior or becoming a part of your life is transitory. I'm going to do it for a month. I'm sick of it. I'm going to go back to the way I'm used to doing it because that's a part of my life. This is not, right? Fad and commercial diets don't work. They can for certain people. They maintain it. They keep it as part of their life, but in general, they don't. Extremity is not sustainable and can compromise your health. Anything that is extreme is not sustainable, and that's why these things don't work. We will talk about these hormones that are affecting hunger and body weight regulation. This is a little preface to where we're going with the endocrine system. Ghrelin coming from stomach, CCK coming from the gut, insulin coming from the pancreas. Believe it or not, your fat cells, adipose cells, make a hormone called leptin. Think of like liposuction, leptin, that actually all tell your brain you're not hungry and to eat less, because they're trying to feed in and affect your metabolism and your body weight regulation. We'll talk more about this later. I will just end here. We'll start with this on Wednesday, and we'll go through cells and mitosis on Wednesday. And this is it. The study guide actually outlines all of these little concepts and topics all the way through mitosis. So, cards, yes, see you later. Have a good day. And I will see you guys Wednesday or at office hours. Take a minute to jot down on your cards for me. I will stop this.